10,000 Ukrainian troops are at risk of encirclement after Russia broke through the front lines and advanced on a key supply line from two directions, wrote the UK publication, the Daily Telegraph, in a state of panic. The Russian advance on the key road came shortly after the US cut off intelligence sharing to Ukraine, they said. By limiting surveillance, the US will have allowed Russians to operate more freely and plan attacks without Ukrainian knowledge, experts believe. A military intelligence officer in Kiev told the Telegraph that the freeze amounted to more or less a total blackout. Ukrainian media reported today that the Russians carried out a series of attacks that allowed them to penetrate even deeper into Ukrainian defense, particularly to the east and west of the logistical artery leading from Sumy region to Sudzha. After capturing Vedlikovo, the Russian forces continued their advance on the western flank, capturing almost all of Lebedivka and pushing the Ukrainian troops back to the village of Loknia. Meanwhile, the Russians continued attacks on border villages in the Sumy region, threatening to reach Ukraine's rear and cut off logistics to Sudzha while still on Ukrainian territory. While the Ukrainian armed forces claimed to have repelled these assaults near Zuravka, the Russians continued to accumulate small units near Novenkoye, aiming to break through to Basivka. From this village to the Sumy Sudzha highway, there is less than 3 kilometers. More concerning, however, was the Russian strike from the eastern flank, where they managed to break through Ukrainian defenses near the village of Kurilivka and advance up to 7 kilometers west of the Sel River. As a result, Ukrainian forces in the vicinity of the village of Guevo found themselves cut off from logistics. Ukrainian media reports that stabilization efforts are currently underway to prevent the Russians from advancing further and breaking through to the road to Sudzha, which has already been under their fire control for a long time. In the north, the Russian forces fully occupied Pogrebki. Ukrainian troops continued their retreat towards Mala Loknia, where pre-prepared defensive positions exist. A 3-kilometer wide grey zone, uncontrolled by either side, has formed between Pogrebki and Malaya Loknia. To the east, this grey zone extends up to 7 kilometers. Taking advantage of this, the Ukrainian armed forces improved their positions and secured Cherkasky Porishny. Ukrainian sources report that amid the Russian advance in the Kursk region, discussions have resurfaced about the feasibility of holding the Kursk bridgehead. 7 months have passed since the start of the Kursk operation. At its peak, the Ukrainian armed forces controlled over 1,000 square kilometers, and currently they still fully hold less than 350, with an additional 178 in the grey zone, meaning that the Russians do not control more than 500 square kilometers, they say. So this was a frontline report for the Kursk region from Ukrainian sources, where the Russians are rapidly closing in on the key logistics town of Sudzha. As you will see, whether it be from Russian, Ukrainian, or Western sources, all of which I will examine in today's video, the conclusion is the same. Ukraine has a stark choice to make: pull out or be destroyed. Now, as I continue to work hard to bring you information from various viewpoints, all I ask is that you continue to support this channel with donations via Super Thanks or PayPal, and best of all, consider joining the channel membership community. In it, there are over 70 pieces of content including long-form analysis, combat footage, much of it too graphic for YouTube, and breaking news not shown in mainstream media. Stick around to the end for some bonus footage, and in the end screen, a trailer video explaining what you get in the channel membership. Now let's get back into today's video. Sergei Goretz, Ukrainian military expert, had this to say about what is happening in Kursk. 7 months ago, the Ukrainian armed forces entered the Kursk region, secured a significant foothold, and established the Kursk front. This development was a major setback for Russian forces, and for over half a year, they have been suffering losses while continuously attempting to reclaim these areas through numerous counterattacks. Currently, he says, Ukraine holds a 350 square kilometer foothold in the Kursk region. After crossing the Sel River, Russian forces are attempting to advance towards the Sumy Sudzha highway, a major supply route for Ukrainian forces. However, further west of Kursk, there is another asphalt road also used by Ukrainian troops. Now from Zuravka and Basivka, south of Vedlikove, and from Gwevo, Kurlikovka. Visual confirmations indicate that Russian forces are advancing from Kurilivka along the forested lowlands. At this stage, he says that blocking the Russian enemy advances is crucial. Due to their use of strike capabilities and fiber optic drones, Russian forces significantly disrupt logistics along the Sudzha-Sumy route. This presents a key challenge influencing the course of battles in the sector. Recently, active combat operations have resumed in several sectors. Ole Chaus, senior sergeant of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade Magura, which is defending north of Vedlikovo, reported that Russian enemy infantry assault operations have begun, with Russian forces trying to break through Ukrainian positions. They operate in small groups, he said. In quotations, right now the enemy is attacking in groups of 4, advancing toward positions that may have been destroyed by drones or artillery. Before assaults, they always conduct artillery shelling, including 120mm mortars and other heavy weaponry. Only after that do the infantry groups move in. Their main offensive effort is currently felt from the northwest, where they have started a more active push. Additionally, the enemy is trying to disrupt our logistics in the southern part of the sector, aiming to create a narrow corridor under full Russian drone control, both fiber optic and regular UAVs, Chaus explained. He noted that the situation significantly complicates Ukrainian operations. Furthermore, many Ukrainian fighters are over 40 years old, and they must conduct 30-kilometer foot marches to deliver supplies. In quotations, imagine carrying ammunition, water, and food for 8 to 10 days. These marches can take over a day, all under constant drone and artillery threats. Logistics simply don't function due to the difficult conditions. Only in rain, snow, or strong winds can we avoid drone detection and deliver supplies by vehicle. However, transport losses are high, and the lack of vehicle forces soldiers to make long foot marches. Despite these challenges, the brigade has a sufficient stock of drones, and Ukrainian forces use them effectively. Most enemy assaults have been stopped thanks to drones, which have destroyed tanks, BMPs, BTRs, and other equipment. Additionally, combat engineers have played a vital role, mining roads and fields. However, he said, Russian forces suffer the heaviest losses from drones. For example, during recent assaults, drones neutralized 3 out of every 4 Russian soldiers, Chaus added. And of course, it is likely that this information is exaggerated. Now let's hear what Russian forces have to say about the Kursk encirclement.
Не будет ни малейшего шанса.
According to the Telegram channel, the fighting in the city of Sudzha began by the AIDA group of Special Forces Akhmat, the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment, and units of the 11th Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade. In addition, the drones of the Moses group are working in the air. The Telegram group of the AIDA group reports that detachments of St. Petersburg, Gorets, Kokla, Press, and Kashtan, Special Forces Akhmat, are advancing in several directions at once together with related units. Military bloggers note that the attack began suddenly due to the use of underground communications. The Russian Ministry of Defense did not comment on the information at the time of writing the material. Russian troops began to storm Sudzha in the Kursk region, attacking from several directions at once. The first details of the operation were revealed by military blogger Yuri Podolyak. According to him, the sudden attack of the Russian army literally stunned the soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine, some of whom fled or surrendered. The opponent, of course, with the day's concentrated blow from several directions at once, stunned and in some places already running, and even surrenders.
Ну что, отвоевались? Фамилия?
Podolyak added that Russian troops penetrated the city from several sides. At the same time, he stressed that it is unlikely to be possible to liberate Sudzha on March 8th, but there are all opportunities to break the resistance of the armed forces of Ukraine. On the same day in the morning, the military officer Eugene Podobny reported that the beginning of the offensive on Sudzha, apparently the operation to liberate the Kursk region, is entering the final stage, he suggested.
Гранату закинь!
A TASS newspaper source in the law enforcement agencies also said that the Russian military continues to advance. Persistent fighting is in the Sudzha district. The interlocutor of the agency noted that the battles are taking place in the forests in the south of the district. It is also known that the military of the Russian armed forces are opposed by elite assault units of the armed forces of Ukraine. The day before, on March 7th, military recruiters reported that the Russian armed forces broke through the front near the state border in the Kursk region. According to their data, Russian troops advanced more than 5 kilometers in a few days. According to the American publication The New York Post, which communicated with the Ukrainian military, units of the armed forces of Ukraine can be withdrawn from the Kursk region within 2 weeks. Thus, after the suspension of the transfer of intelligence from the United States to Ukraine, the Russian armed forces achieved progress in the Russian region. In addition, the intensity of attacks on the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine has increased. It is noted that the sortie of Ukrainian troops of the Kursk region is on the verge of failure. According to the interlocutors of the newspaper, in the next 2 weeks, the Ukrainian army may refuse the operation, referring to limited access to and from the region. And here's a report from Russian media, RIA Novosti. Ukrainian troops in the Sudzha direction in the Kursk region lost the opportunity for rotation. There were only a few kilometers left before the enemy group was locked in a cauldron. No more than 10, military and political expert Jan Gagin, who is on a working trip in Kursk, told RIA Novosti. If we talk about the Sudzha cauldron, as they say now, it really continues to narrow. Let's say it's about 10 kilometers away from its narrowing. At the same time, the Ukrainians are now deprived of the possibility of rotation and supply of logistics on one of the largest transport arteries, which is now under our control and which the enemy has used for its supply, Gagin told the agency. According to him, the Ukrainian enemy, realizing that he was losing the South Donetsk section of the front, transferred part of the forces to the DPR, thereby taking the reserves intended for his Kursk group. Accordingly, the Kursk group of the armed forces of Ukraine remains in a big minus, without logistics, which will now go south and without rotation. This will significantly complicate the situation, he stressed. According to the interlocutor of the agency, the Ukrainian military themselves are beginning to understand that the command simply abandoned them on the Kursk section of the front and did not even prepare positions for their retreat. Let me repeat that. The command simply abandoned them on the Kursk section of the front and did not even prepare positions for their retreat. That is, he says, the enemy does not invest in the retreat of his forces and throws, as usual, like chips into the fire, regardless of losses, Gagin said. And now for the panic in the Western mainstream media. Here we have the UK publication, the Daily Telegraph. 10,000 Ukrainian troops are at risk of encirclement after Russia broke through the front lines and advanced on a key supply line from 2 directions. Vladimir Putin's forces advanced in Sudzha, 11 kilometers or about 7 miles inside of Russia, crossing the border into Ukraine's Sumy Oblast from the north on Friday. Sudzha is in the Kursk region, which Ukraine seized part of last summer in a surprise offensive that has given them leverage, they say, in possible negotiations to end the war. It is believed that a significant number, and get this, of North Korean troops were used in the offensive to cut the Ukrainian soldiers off with the help of drone warfare to disrupt Kiev's supply chains and logistics. It is always interesting to me how they randomly introduced these North Korean troops with no evidence. Last time I read a report from the West, they say Russia pulled back the North Korean troops due to heavy losses. Now they have reappeared when Ukraine is in trouble. It seems to me this invention of North Korean troops is used to justify the military defeat of Ukraine because they do not want to attribute it solely to the skill and prowess of the Russian military. That's just my opinion. A junior sergeant communicating with the Telegraph via a sporadic phone conversation said Ukraine was considering withdrawing from Kursk to avoid further losses. We want to avoid losses, he said. The fear of encirclement is real.
Відправляють воно на Курськ, Дорога в один кінець. Жодна рота ще звідти не повернулась. Жоден батальйон.
Maps from the Ukrainian military blog Deep State reveal that roughly 3/4 of the Ukrainian force inside Russia is nearly fully encircled and almost split in two. The remaining troops near the Russian border are connected by a corridor about 1 kilometer long and less than 500 meters wide at its narrowest point. The only Ukrainian road into Sudzha is now in range of Russia's first-person view drones, complicating efforts to hold the area and retreat if needed. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, said Russian units were trying to take control of a key highway from Yunakivka in Sumy Oblast to Sudzha. Elite Ukrainian units, including the 95th Air Assault Brigade, the 115th Mechanized Brigade, and the 8th Separate Special Purpose Regiment, remain active in Kursk Oblast. Russian troops are said to be extending the combat zone to the villages of Novenkoye and Vasivka, with reports of them seizing control of Novaya and Stara Sorochista. The Russian advance, they say, on the key road came shortly after the US cut off intelligence sharing to Ukraine. By limiting surveillance, the US will have allowed the Russians to operate more freely and plan attacks without Ukrainian knowledge, experts believe. A military intelligence officer in Kiev told The Telegraph that the freeze amounted to more or less a total blackout. It was initially reported that the intelligence cuts only applied inside Russia. Friday's assault took place. The assault came as President Donald Trump also banned private American companies and commercial services from providing satellite data for Ukraine, prompting aerospace company Maxar Technologies to cut off Ukraine's access to its satellite imagery. Maxar is the main supplier of commercial satellite images to Ukraine, showing the movement of Russian troops, as well as the status of important operations, including those inside of Russia. The intelligence cuts also affect Ukraine's ability to predict Russian missile and drone strikes. And lastly, Reuters brought the grim news to Ukrainians in this way. The situation for Ukraine and Kursk is very bad. Pasi Pronin, a military analyst with the Finland-based Black Bird Group, told Reuters. Now there is not much left until Ukrainian forces will either be encircled or forced to withdraw. And withdrawal would mean running a dangerous gauntlet, where the forces would be constantly threatened by Russian drones and artillery, he said. If Ukrainian forces are not able to restore the situation quickly, this could be the moment where the Kursk salient begins to finally close into an encircled pocket. Matveev, another military analyst, said on Telegram that Ukraine had a difficult choice to make. In quotations, the only argument in favor of holding the bridgehead is political, to use the remnants of the bridgehead for bargaining, and also a little morale. After all, a retreat is a retreat, he said.
Один огонь.
А? Ага. Да.
Headshot.